Right. Okay, thank you. The recording wasn't started. I hope, let me know if you are everyone able to see my screen. Can someone answer me if you are able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you. Okay, so in this SDLC model, right, in this SDLC, which is one of the model which we will be following while developing a software. For example, if you are constructing a house, right, you would follow some process. First of all, you would be cleaning up the entire place, and then you'll start digging deeper for the pillars, and then start base, and then start wall constructing, and then slab. This is a process, right? In a similar way, while we are developing a software, we have to follow some methodology for the entire development of life cycle, which contains a different phases. For example, here, uh, you know, so for example, here is one of the thing. I think let me adapt here. Okay, there are multiple things. Please bear with me. My, you know, mm, I hope yes. I think the smart diagram should be enabled here. I don't know why. Right here, and there are multiple phases like the deployment. First of all, which is been especially for the. I mean, we don't directly go to the deployment part. We will go to the discovery, and then we will go for the you know design. Okay, the problem. And then after designing, there will be multiple phases like development. This is where actually the entire thing would be coming here. And then, I mean, actual work will be started. And then the QA. Okay. After the QA, there are few more things like, um, where exactly is my pen has been brought? Okay, there are multiple phases like this. Okay, okay, I think I lost my pen, but fine. QA, and then release, and then next phases would be maintenance. There will be a lot of lot of phases that we would be involved while developing a software. Okay, so this is one of the SDLC process here, and the same thing will be present under the DevOps also. Okay, this is called a pipeline. The actual things will be coming from the development tool here itself. Okay, I hope, let me do my pen here. Okay, this is one phase, and this is another phase. Each will be linked with the one by one. Okay, the exact one thing is called the development, from the QA to the release to the maintenance. It's a maintenance, actually it's not the maintainer. And these are the some of the phases that we do follow. Okay, why we are talking about is, even if you are talking about the DevOps or DevSecops, this is a pipeline basically. Okay, the pipeline means every phase will be linked with that. Everything looks like a simple pipeline. Okay, this we'll call it as a DevOps pipeline, or some part we'll call it as a CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so now let's talk about this part especially. Okay, um, now since we are talking about this is the same pipeline. By this, no, I mean, if you are already been experienced with the DevOps, you would have understand what are all these phases, and what are all tools got involved here. And if you are not seen, you can watch my previous video. I have detailedly explained each and every phase, how many tools, what are tools, where it involved, where it does fit, right? Everything was explained. I hope Sandeep would have been shared you the previous. If not, please watch it. Now we will continue from there itself. Okay, Now we are talking about the DevSecops, right? In this pipeline, the existing pipeline, we'll call it as a DevOps. Now, since we are learning about the DevSecops, especially, okay, let's talk understanding about what exactly the DevSecOps. So basically, the involvement of the security for in each and every phase is nothing but a DevSecOps, meaning you are caring about the security aspect from each and every phase, from from the development to from the basically the development to version control system, building, deploying it, QA deployment, staging deployment, production deployment, security management and log management, and especially the monitoring. These are all some of the phases will be there along with that. I have skipped intentionally because we don't directly dive directly into that, because let me try it here again. Let's this is basically, let's talk about where exactly actual DevOps or DevSecOps will come into the picture. This is a development phase, and there is one more thing called this is a development phase. This is a version control phase. I mean, what I'm talking is this one is a very high level. Now whatever the diagram that I'm going to draw, right, this is a very detailed level, like one depth level, let's say. This is a build phase. Under the build phase, after the build phase, there is another phase called the deployment. After the deployment, three things will be there. The deployment can be in three environments or multiple environments. For example, the QA, for example, staging, for example, production. These are the three things. Okay, this all will come under the deployment. After the deployment, right, let's take this as a production, right? We will be talking about the monitoring part. Okay, the monitoring is very important. This is where the security aspect also will come. The earlier, right, we won't be having a in a DevOps part. These are all been there and linked with each and every phase. Okay, this is a normal DevOps pipeline. Okay, in terms of a DevSecOps, the security will be involved in each and every phases and somehow. Okay, let's talk about what are all, how it has been going to be there here. Okay, now let's talk about that. This is a development phase. Okay, right, this involves the security. How it involve the securities, for example, while you are developing a software, the software that you can use, or the software that you are developing using any programming language. It could be a Java or C++ or PHP, Go language, or Python, or anything. While you are developing using any code, right, you would be writing you would be scanning that using a different tools. For example, scanning means while developing itself, you are involving the security aspects. For example, you are enabling the pre-commits checks, meaning, for example, once you have developed a code, sometimes we'll use a static code. I mean, we will do the hard code. For example, you would define your username and password inside a code itself. It's not a good thing. And once you have pushed into your GitHub, it can't be deleted. Just remember, once, if you push or if you write anything in a web, it can't be deleted, because from web it will be distributed across the world, and it distributed across the different servers. If you deleted someone, don't think that everything was gone. It will be there in somehow. The same thing will apply under the here also. So that's why we need to avoid writing a hard code values or seek passwords in the development itself. To avoid such kind of thing, there is a concept we'll use, pre-commit checks, meaning what we do is we will validate each and every commit before it actually committing into the remote server by using pre-commit checks, and by involving another thing called another concept is integrating with the IDE plugins. For example, if you are using some editor while writing a code, I mean, I'm talking about the developers aspect. You don't think you have to maintain of this, but as a DevSecOps person or a DevOps person, you have to assist or tell to the developers saying that while you are developing the code, I'm going to enable some pre-commit checks. This will avoid you to commit a secrets or password to the remote server or a version control. So this way we are being safe by committing a hard code value. This is what you are going to tell to the developers. Okay. Another way you do suggest to the developers is, while you are using any of the IDE, which means some editor, for example, Eclipse or Visual Studio Code Editor, while you are using those editors, there are some plugins. What does it do is, it will identify some bugs and vulnerabilities while developing phase itself. So meaning, like, you would create some variables, but you won't use it. You unnecessarily creating your variables which you are not using. That way, the memory will be, when you run your application, right, the memory will be very consumed and it is overutilized. You would be getting a buffer exception related things, right? That kind of suggestions or some bugs will be used, that will be suggested by these IDE plugins. And sometimes you are using some kind of, for example, you want to write some application or develop an application which will interact with the Facebook, and Facebook will provide us some kind of an SDK. That SDK may have some kind of vulnerability, even though it won't have, but still it may have, right? So chances are there. So to scan such kind of a third party SDKs or libraries, you need to uses some kind of a scanner also, that you would be suggesting to the developers here. Okay. IDE one thing, and third party scanners, these are the things that would be using in the development phase, and these are the suggestions that you would give to the developers in the development phase. The next phase is, especially this is our favorite part, because this is our version control system, which is nothing but our source code management. For example, this is where our GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket will come into picture. In this phase, especially the maintenance of you know version control system, what kind of a task that we'll be getting, or what are the areas of responsibilities that we need to have as a DevSecops person is, you know especially there are two major things. One is, once you have pushed your code to GitHub, you have to take care of, scanning the entire repository. Okay. Meaning, for example, while creating a repository in a GitHub or Bitbucket, sometimes we'll forget, instead of making a repository as a private, it will be a public. This is a blender mistake every person, not like every person, the respective person would be doing, because I have seen the people, instead of it is very minute but still a big mistake, meaning this way, and this way, once we scan the repositories, it will clearly tell you whether it is a public or private. And sometimes we will push our secret codes, access codes, and everything in it. It's not the right one, so we have to scan for that. So this is one thing. Another one is, in the code itself, we will use a hard coded value directly. Your username and password we would be using directly. Instead of that, you have to use a parameterized, I mean, basically you have to add those kind of a secrets into a secret management tools. What does it mean is, you would be defining variables in a settings, and then you mask those variables and use it in your pipeline or in your GitHub. This is where one of the secret management that you would be using, and you have to take care of this aspect also when it comes to the version control, or when you are working in a GitHub or Bitbucket or any of the source code management tool. Okay. The next thing is, which is very important thing, this is our actual work will be starting, build part. Especially, let me increase the font size. In the build phase, there are multiple parts here. Okay. In the build part, we would be having things like, you know there are multiple aspects here. uh, okay, the first one is, this is where actual SAST, another concept is there, a static application security part. Okay. That will be, and another part is a test cases. Okay. The test cases means, for example, unit test cases, integration test cases, all who will be the responsible. Just, I think it's very happy. Okay. These are all UI integration, UI, I mean, integration, unit test cases, integration test cases will be there. For example, you have developed a project which is written in the Java language. While you are building, before building or before compiling your project, I mean, of course, before compiling your project, the developer would have written some automation test cases or some unit test cases, some integration test cases. You would run those test cases in the build phase, and along with that, you would be doing something called a static code analysis, which means before actually building an application, you would apply some scanners, or you would scan your entire code to find a vulnerabilities. That thing is called basically a SAST. We'll call it as a SAST here, a static application security testing part. Okay, this is one of the concept mainly involved because of the security was involved in this space. Okay, now for this is basically one of the SAST means, which is especially you would use this tool under the development itself, meaning this tool, okay, this tool will be involved while developing itself, meaning you don't use this tool after completion of a development. Okay, like for example, talked about the IDE here, right? Because of if you are using a Visual Studio Code editor or Eclipse, right, we will use some kind of IDE plugins, find bugs, find secrets kind of a plugins that will try to scan your code and then give you a list of report, I mean, give you the list of vulnerabilities that you have in your code itself. Okay, and also you can integrate that into your CI/CD pipeline. Okay, for by configuring the webhooks and all. Okay, and because of this SaaS tool, right, I mean, because of this SaaS tool, it will ensure if you done any changes, you don't have any vulnerabilities itself, and you would be eliminating most of the vulnerable part in the developing phase itself. Okay, so it won't even bubble up any vulnerabilities after completion of the development if you include your SaaS tools into the in this build phase itself. There are there are multiple tools available here. Okay, when it comes to in the SaaS, right? So mainly there are two basic things here under the SaaS. One is a open source, another one is a commercial tools. Okay, these are the major things here. Okay, and under the open source, there are multiple tools like find bugs. Okay, um, Bandit, ESLint. These are some of the SaaS tools of a open source here. What does it mean is find bugs is a one of the SaaS tool, which is a static code analysis. What does it mean by the static code analysis means? It will scan your code and then find the bugs. Okay, it won't scan your application means when you deploy an application, if you run any scan, that is called a dynamic code analysis, that we will be doing at the deployment phase, that we'll talk about, that will come under as a DAST. Okay, now we are talking about the SAST. Before running your application or before making a build, you would, if you run a code analysis, that will call as a SAST, I mean static code analysis. Basically static means a constant. Whatever the constant code that you have written, if you scan against that, that will call as a static code analysis. The concept that will be, we will call it as a SAST. Okay, don't confuse between the static code analysis and the SAST, which is a static application security testing part. Okay, now this is some of the open source tools. For example, if you take one of the SaaS tool called find bugs, this find bugs application is a we would be using for the Java related application. Okay, for the Bandit, right, for the Bandit is another open source tool we would be using for the Python related project. ESLint is for the JavaScript, especially the Node.js related. Let's talk about the commercial now. Okay, in the SaaS tool also here. Okay, commercial. There are some commercial tools also. For example, Checkmark, SaaS, Fortify. Okay, this is one of the commercial, and the most popular one is a Veracode. These are some of the commercial tools which have a community editions as well. So okay, Veracode, most of the people will be using, either Fortify, Checkmark SaaS is also another commercial tool. When it comes to the SaaS, they would be using it out. Okay, these are the some of the tools. Okay, and these are the most popular or highly rated tools we will be using it out. Fortify will be come under the SAST and DAST also. Some tools will come only the SAST part, only static code analysis, meaning if you use this tool, it's able to scan your code, but it won't dynamically test your code. Okay, this will come under the build phase here. Okay, now when it comes to the deployment part, what will happening here is that when it comes to the mainly deployment part, this is what we have been talking here. Okay, this is the major area which would be coming here. Okay, in the deployment part, you would be deploying the build, whatever you have built in this phase, you would be deploying it under the different environments. Those environments could be the QA testing environment, okay, the staging, and the production here. And obviously the entire thing is the production here. Okay, in these are the phases, or these are the environment we will call here. Okay, the entire thing we will call it as an environment sphere. You would deploy that build in these environments. In these environments, you would using a different security tools also. We will talk a little bit about each and every phase, what kind of a tools that we will be using here. This is the phase where you would be using a DAST, which is a dynamic application security testing. Okay, which is another concept which will be involved while testing a application in a security aspects. Okay, this under this concept there is a something called dynamic code analysis or dynamic application testing. Okay, now let's talk about that as well. Just give me a minute, guys. Okay, okay, basically DAST will come into picture after deployment. Okay, especially it is not comes under the static part. Okay, and it won't be concentrate. It won't be the concentrate at the vulnerabilities which are present inside your code. It will be concentrate on the vulnerabilities which are exposed to the outer world. Meaning, for example, there are a lot of vulnerabilities, right? Cross-site scripting, SQL injections, hijacking the session, business logic vulnerabilities. These are some of the vulnerabilities that we can test only after deploying the application. Okay, so these are the some of the things. Okay, and hijacking, this we can't test from a code. This we can exploit. These kind of vulnerabilities can be exploited if we have in our web application. Okay, and this is the achievement, or this is the test that we do using a DAST concept. Okay, and mainly it will be focusing on the vulnerabilities once it has been deployed. Okay, and the tools that generally these guys would be using here is again it will have each and every phase will have a open source as well as uh, open source and commercial also here. Okay, so this is some of the tools are basically will be involved into the especially these are some of the one minute guys, let me write here so it will be easy. So these two, along with the DAS, there are some more things also will be commanded. We will be talking those also here. So these are the major important tools, or the rating is WASP, job tool, which is a open source one. Another one is this is one of the open source tool would be using on most of the companies. If you want to go for the commercial, right, again it will be come under the Tenable IO, okay, or Tenable IO, and there is something called Veracode. This also comes under the Dast also here. And there is a one more tool would be using a 45, okay, 45 web inspect. This is the some of the open source and commercial tools we will be using under the Dast concept here. Okay, now in this one, now let's talk about environment specific security tools here. When it comes to the environment specific security tools means especially the container, cloud environment, all the security related tools here. Okay, when it comes to the security tools, Claire, Trevi, these are the some of the security tools we would be using here. Okay, this for example, when it comes to the, okay, I think let me write it here, that will be easy to understand. It is especially the container security and environment security tools. For example, if you take the AWS as environment, we'll use the AWS Shield, and WAF. These are the some of the tools that we would be using for securing our environments also. That environment could be anything. I mean, anything in the sense either QA or staging or production. Okay, and for the when it comes to the security, we will using as a Clary, Clary, Trevi, Doc Inspect. These are some of the open source tools that we would be using for the container security tools. Okay, and when it comes to the AWS environment, these are the things we would be using. If you are talking about the Azure or some other environment, it will have their respective security scanning tools. Okay, now once you have deployed your application into either of the environments, right, we would be doing let's talk about the things that we do at each and every environment, that it also help you in this QA environment. You would be doing a regression testing, automation test cases. This is one of the automation that you can do. In the staging environment, you would be doing a pen testing. This is where security aspects, I mean, pen tester team will come, and in this one, these are the red team, blue team, gray team. These are the security teams. They will come and then pen test your application. They would be try to, as I mentioned here, right, they would try to do exploit our web application to find if there are any vulnerabilities. In the staging environment, they don't do on the production environment. What do I mean by is, if you want to implement a DevSecops, you should have a minimum of these environments, because you can't do everything on a production, because production will be affected if we do any of these testings, and you would be impacting your product, right? So end users will be getting phased, and they would be having a less confidence on your production. So I mean product or application. Okay, so that is where they have to do the pen testing at the staging environment itself here. Okay, in the production, what they do is they won't, I mean, it's not like they won't do anything. They would be doing it only in the infrastructure security aspect of it. For example, they would be enabling the web application firewalls in the production. They would be doing a Cloudflare. They would be enabling the Cloudflare for and even they would be enabling some of the I think you might have heard about or you might have faced once you logged in a website, right? Once you are trying to access your website, it will scan your IP address, whether your IP address is a blacklist or not, and it will ask you to do some checks, like select this image, select they'll give you 5 or 6 image and ask you to select, any of the image which is having a car, to avoid did to find out whether you are really a human or you are a bot, or to avoid such kind of a DOS attacks, distributed denial of service, or such kind of vulnerabilities would be facing. Because why we are taking of all this is, nowadays security is a major concern. For every month there is a one kind of a data breach, and if you are following any of the security related articles, right, somehow at least 1 month you are getting a one big data breach, or somehow you would be getting some security related issue. That is why major concern is a security aspect. That's why these kind of roles has been bubbling up, and then ask you to learn about the security aspect even though you are a DevOps person. See how the DevOps has been come. It is a part of the development and operations. If you are learning about the DevOps, right, you have to know the concepts about the development part, and you have to know about the some of the aspects of the operations also. Now, since you are joining as a DevSecops person, you also required to understand about the security aspect of each and every phase it is involved. And these are the some of the tools here. Okay, now let's talk about the last part here, that is about the maintenance, or security management and log management here. This is one of the people would be stopping here itself. Generally, people means some organization will be writing their pipeline till this part, till the deployment part. They won't be doing a security management or log management, the maintenance or monitoring. People would be using sometimes any of, they will call with the any of the naming here. Okay, in this phase there will be another separate sub concepts here. What do I mean by here is, here you would be meaning about the security logs analysis, log management, threat intelligence. Okay, and alerting will be also coming here. There are different aspects here also. For example, as I mentioned here, right, real-time log analysis. Okay, so what does it do is, while the application running itself, there is a some tool that is called Splunk. This Splunk will try to get a logs. That logs will be having all the what users are doing of what kind of an actions. This is kind of a compliance when it comes to the using a product. Compliance means, we might have heard about Facebook is tracking our data, where we are going, what kind of a talking we are doing, what kind of a chat we are doing, and all this, right? This is, they are tracking whatever the data that we are whatever we are doing, right? With the help of these kind of tools, Splunk, they will keep on track you what user is doing. It is not like they are intentionally doing, to understand the security aspect of it. If any user is trying to inject some kind of a malicious code, or they're trying to provide some kind of a script which is affecting the entire system, to understand these kind of things, they will install this, they will enable a Splunk to analyze entire the logs or the entire user behavior. Splunk is one of the security management tool that they would be using. For logs analysis, right, these guys would be using some of the log related tools like ELK or Prometheus. Okay, uh, Prometheus, Grafana. So these are the tools they would be using when it comes to the logs management. When it comes to the when it comes to the threat intelligence, right? There are some of the threat intelligence tools. Threat intelligence tools means it is it is a tool which will show you the what are the current vulnerabilities, how many vulnerabilities are there, is your system having any vulnerabilities. It is kind of a big, huge amount of a tools, a huge amount of a database where you can understand what are how many vulnerabilities are there. We won't be doing at all, we won't be using at all, but This is the area of the security teams, especially the red team, security operational teams and all things. But as a DevOps person, you need to know at least what exactly this tool is all about. Another one is a network also here. I mean, there is another, you would be scanning, network scanning. They would be using a Wireshark, you know, Wireshark, I think Nessus. These are the some of the tools. They would be scanning the entire network of a company or product using some of the tools to understand whether your network is secured or not. Okay. Yeah, I think these are the main phases. Of course, we have talked a lot, especially since we have 40 minutes of time. We have talked a lot about it. Don't worry, when we learn about, when we join our actual course, we will detailedly talk about each and every word that we have talked now. Okay, very detailed, we'll explain it. Okay, now let's talk about if you have any questions. Just give me one. Okay, I got a power charging. Okay. Yeah. Any questions or any concerns so far? I hope this has been clear. If not, we can talk very detailed while we are join an actual. Any questions so far, guys?
I think everyone is Telugu in the session.
Okay, I think I mean, we will be teaching in Telugu also in actual classes. Since I've already spoke here, right? Let's continue on English. But I'm fine with talking in Telugu also. Since I've not seen this message, I would have been talking in Telugu also. But fine. Yes, we can. Our course can be also in English, in
No,
Telugu.
actually, I'm expecting it in Telugu. I'm not happy with the English.
Okay. Uh, Okay, fine. Since we already talked here, right? Let's talk in offline, so we can be easily talk in Telugu and then explain this also. Since I've already talked, it will be very difficult if I want to start from scratch in Telugu because it is 40 minutes already been done. If
I'm
you
not
want,
asking you to.
it's
No, I'm not asking you to repeat it now. But while the classes are going on, it's
yes,
better
yes, definitely.
if you.
We will be talking in Telugu also. But the thing is, let me be frank or transparent here. Okay, right? To understand, it's fine. But when you are working in a company, right, it won't be accepted. To be frank, let me be transparent. Because
No, no, no. No, my question is, I don't have any problem with English, but
mhm,
I'm not finding anything interest.
mhm. Sure,
I have,
sure,
I
no
have
problem.
problem with I have problem with your English, to be honest.
Okay, fine, no issues. While learning the tools and concept in actual classes, we'll be speaking in Telugu also. Okay. మనం ఏం చేద్దామంటే we will be talking each and every phase in Telugu also while teaching. I hope I answered your question. Classes also will be delivered in Telugu and English.
I mean, what I mean is, it's better